UAP, unidentified anomalous phenomenon. Are they extraterrestrial, interdimensional, time travelers in origin, or are they simply a result of top-secret military projects, false flag alien invasions, PSYOP, drones, or other human-made aircraft? Join the discussion now on UAP Crossfire.
Well, good evening, everybody. Welcome to UAP Crossfire. And just a big shout out to the greatest audience on the planet, as Commander Cobra would say, where we try to answer the biggest question in the universe. Are we alone? So let's introduce our co-host for tonight. And he's back, the silverback of ufology, Dandy Don Eckert. Hello, Dad. Welcome back.
How you doing,
Donnie.
guys? How you doing?
You're looking good. My God, and stuff. I wish I look as good as you do, but I don't.
Yeah.
And stuff. You
Well, my
feeling
wife
good?
always says I'm better than nothing, so, you know.
Okay. What a way to introduce you, but we'll take it. And of course, our resident pilot, and he doesn't like to be called an expert, but let's say he's the most knowledgeable man on this planet when it comes to aviation, Commander Cobra. Hello,
Good
Commander.
evening, sirs. Great to see you, Don. Glad to see you're back with us in the saddle.
Yeah, well, for a bit anyway.
Yep.
Okay, we'll take that. It's always good. Hey, just remember, you got to give us at least one of them sons of bitches tonight. Okay? I missed it.
Well, you
And of
know,
course-
originally why I'm here tonight. Okay.
That's it.
I
You want to leave
I got
after
a
that?
load-
Go ahead.
I got a load of disinformation the other day from Skywatcher. He said he wanted to do a special broadcast about the Israeli-Iran thing, okay? And since you, Chris, Commander Cobra, and myself are all military veterans, he wanted to do this special broadcast. So I said, fine. I thought he said Wednesday, so I called him yesterday. No, it's tomorrow night. But this is a regular UAP show. So we'll see where it goes.
Well, if they...
Don, you were here last.
Don't you wheedle, Skywatcher. I know damn well what you said to me.
You weren't here last week, but they were talking about the India thing that happened, and then all of a sudden, while we're live with John, your guest tonight, all the proverbial, could I just say it? Might as well. Shit hit the fan. So I know I'm in trouble, but that's what happens. But in the event something goes down, I'm sure you guys are on standby.
Always.
There you go.
I guess.
And
I don't think anything's going to happen tonight because he said he's not going to make a decision for 2 weeks.
And with the four of you also, John Burroughs has agreed to participate, I believe. I don't want to get too ahead of myself. If that event happens, John will also be joining us, hopefully.
Excellent.
Okay, good.
And Commander, I got to ask, is that background anything going on?
That's the solution right there, folks.
Is that a 30,000 pound bunker buster that he's letting go there?
That's a Moab. And if Chris goes to his email, I have a video clip showing 2 of these dropping out of said airplane.
Wow.
I will have to go to my email then during the
Go to
break.
your email, and you can pop that up. There's a couple really good videos I sent you up tonight.
Isn't the supposedly that's supposed to be able to carry a 40,000? That's 230s.
Yeah, I was going to say, you've exceeded the payload of that aircraft, Commander.
See?
Oh, he's tight-lipped.
You see that? He just shut down. No comment from the commander. Anyway, gentlemen, have a good show. I'm out of here before I get in more trouble.
You are in trouble. And as I was saying, or just before I got interrupted, I won't say rudely because Bill doesn't become rude and stuff. Our spiritual leader, Dan the Padre Carson. Hello, Padre. Give us a little blessing. There
Bless
you go.
Yep.
It'd
We're all.
be nice if you brought a few spirits with you, but that's
well,
probably not happening.
Yeah, no, 5's a crowd.
Yeah, I'm just full of the Holy Ghost, Don, and I'll pray for your swift recovery. But right
Is
now,
there such a thing as the holy bullshit that maybe Don has or something?
No, he's right now worshiping at the altar of Vicodin, I think, and we're just going to have to wait and see what happens.
Tramadol.
Oh, Oh, that's weak stuff. Come on.
Yeah, the VA never gives you the good shit.
Yeah, and stuff. But anyways, listen, so tonight is part 2 with our great guest, John Burroughs. And as you know, John is a retired U.S. Air Force person. He was the primary witness to the Rendlesham Forest incident. He's probably one of the most knowledgeable guys I got. That's what's going on in the world today, not only in ufology, but the military, what's going on overseas. I've had a lot of talks with John, and the more I talk to him, the more I get respected. So, Bill, bring on John Burroughs. Hello, John. How are you?
You're muted, John.
Yeah,
Unmute.
Sorry, no.
There you go.
There we go. Welcome.
Good to be here.
All right. Well, listen, I'm going to start out the conversation with the Wall Street Journal, because that's what we were going to talk about last week. And because everything was happening in the Middle East, we thought all hell was going to break loose. And, it did for a little bit. But, we're just kind of waiting to see what the next round that goes on. So let's start with the Wall Street Journal. The Pentagon disinformation that fueled America's UFO mythology. U.S. military fabricated evidence of an alien technology and allowed rumors to fester to cover up a real secret weapons program. So basically, the Wall Street Journal is saying the U.S. government is full of it. All this stuff that we've been talking about is mostly garbage. And it's really to protect special ops programs that Don Eckert has been talking about since I've known Don. He's been talking about special access programs. And so they came on to say, hey, since the Roswell crash, we've been fooling you. We put out phony pictures, phony information, and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And you guys fell for it. So, John, let's start off with that.
Oh, I'm first?
You're first, baby.
Oh, wow.
You're the guest, so you get the arrows first.
Oh, okay. I'll put the shield up. I'll have Y22 coverage. The article, to me, just shows the American people just how deceptive our government is to the very population that they're supposed to be protecting. The fact of the matter is, it's quieted down in the last couple of days, though. I did get jumped on again today about Salas's rebuttal. And to be honest with you, I think they were being truthful about what happened in Maelstrom. I think they also have been truthful about what happened to those northern tier bases. Based on the research I've done on how our technologies have advanced, where we're going, how radars play a part in it, these EM generators, including the Marks generator, play a part in it. And the fact of the matter is, the UFO world will never accept UAPs. In fact, early on, they weren't even very happy that it changed from UFOs to UAPs. The UFO world has been conditioned since War of the Worlds on nuts and bolts, UFOs flying from some other place, coming down here, interacting with us, but never leaving any evidence, and it has to be biological beings. And anytime you talk about anything different or any other possibilities, you get attacked unmercifully from the UFO side of things, to include the guy that actually started all this and is in the middle of it now, but he stayed kind of quiet. His name still goes up, because you have to say Jacques Vallée was the guy that championed the fact of what UAPs probably are and how they're different than UFOs that we've been conditioned to believe are here. And he ran with it and got attacked for it from the very beginning. And still, it's opened up a little bit more because of the information that's been released since 2017. But I was just doing some research before the show. Early on, UFOs, hard craft, were about 70 to 80% of what people saw. Now it's down to about 70-30 UAPs, and it's about 50-50 overall right now on the descriptions of what witnesses have said over the past few decades. And isn't it interesting that our technology is advancing, in the last couple of decades? And what I believe is we're in the cuspices of the next Manhattan Project. that the next level of technology is about to be introduced. It has been introduced, but hasn't been formally announced yet. And everything about warfare is about to change. And that's what's in that first book.
You know, John, I will say two things before I pass it on to one of the other co-hosts tonight. One, the government has never explained anything before 1949. They're saying at 1949, we started this cover-up. Well, what about all the sightings before 1949? I mean, do they just disappear? They have no explanation for that. They never said anything about that. That's number one. And number two is the technology that we advanced so much. I mean, we've already pretty much claimed disclosure of technology because the White House put out a paper saying, hey, you know, we have conquered, you know, time and space. We're able to manipulate, is the correct word, manipulate time and space. And distances have been annihilated. If that isn't disclosure of new technology, I don't know what else there is. I mean, that's pretty much saying, you know, we could do all this stuff that we thought were conspiracy theories before, right, John?
Yeah, they've opened up a lot of things recently. Boeing just announced that they were creating a plasma effect that could protect tanks, airplanes, and even personnel. They came out and admitted that they're using this technology right now as we speak over in the Middle East. The president just announced the Golden Dome, which was an advancement of SDI. And interesting enough, SDI was being worked on right outside the back gate at Rendlesham. But a lot of these events are not hard craft. They're just not. People describe seeing, you know, balls of light, or I shouldn't call balls of light, but plasmas, or the effect. It's not a craft. They don't describe a craft. They describe distortion. They describe, you know, like what we had out there at Rendlesham. We had static in the air. We all viewed it differently. There's just a lot of different things that are going on, and it's all playing out in modern warfare as we speak, to include the fact that they've even admitted now they're in the process of trying to transfer human consciousness into this AI technology, to include our own weapon systems. This is a conspiracy. This is all documents that are being released from different agencies inside the government. And yet we still have this big argument about, are we being visited from reptilians, from Zeta Reticuli? And I just think it's ridiculous. And even one of Salas's main things about how the system got shut down, he said, well, we brought it back up in 72 hours. If we'd have done it, we'd have fried the system. Wait a minute, alien technology, we figure out how to overcome alien technology in 72 hours, but we can't protect our own system from a test. I mean, the logic behind this is everybody's so ingrained in UFO world about what a UFO is, which if you go back to Mirage Man in 2013, the same guys now that are testifying in front of Congress saying, well, it's possibly real, they were admitting back in 2013 in the Mirage Man documentary book that the government was using the UFO thing to cover up what our technology advances are. But seemingly enough, none of these guys will ever admit how we advanced so far in technology so fast.
Yeah, and as Don has mentioned before, special actions programs, we'll never see them. I mean, they are so well hidden and so deep that probably the president doesn't have knowledge of some of them. So I go to Dan first. Dan, the Wall Street Journal puts out this article, says that ufology has got it all wrong because we've been feeding you a whole bunch of, you know, lies and deceptions. And we left pictures of UFOs at a bar near Area 51, so you thought this whole malarkey was going on. But they don't explain anything before 1949. They don't explain anything about what the White House has put out and said. So what's your feelings on this, and what do you have for John?
Well, I think that it has always been my view that at least some of what people are seeing are experimental aircraft. And I think that all of us here on the panel would acknowledge that some of what is being reported is advanced military technology being tested or whatever. But there are several questions that still remain among UFO experiencers, and that I would point immediately to abductions. How do they address people having these experiences, being taken often violently out of their homes at night, have criminal assault done to their bodies, and then returned? If this is a government doing this, they have a lot to answer for in terms of criminal conduct against its citizens. But John, what do you think about that with the experiencers?
Well, first of all, you have to go back and start digging into the manipulation of the mind, which Condon report talks about. Other reports have come out. What they believe they experienced may not be what they experienced. And what I mean is something happened to them, but exactly what was it? Do they even remember correctly? I mean, you could go back to where you go to a crash site, Commander, right? You got 10 people witness something happening, even an airplane crash or something, and each person has a different perspective of what they saw.
Sure.
And that's without even being affected by, let's say, whatever is affecting them, whether it's government or us. And as far as the government, it's out of control, Padre. It's always been out of control. They've never been truthful. They just had a better way of controlling it because the press has evolved now where we have all social media and everything. And you have a lot of people that can get their voice out that couldn't before. But ultimately, you could go to almost every event that's happened, and what's really happening is not what you're being told, including what's going on right now in the Middle East. I guarantee, Commander, you tell me you've been over there. What do we know about 5% of what's really going on? And about 98% of what these experts are talking about will be proven wrong.
Well, on that particular vein, John, I would say that the same thing that you are putting forward, and I'm in agreement in a lot of areas, is exactly the same thing that's happening in the same methodology that you have in the Middle East. Same thing with Ukraine, and the same thing with other places around the world. Meaning there is a template, there is a way of doing business, there's a way of presenting information that has a whole bunch of different adjectives and adverbs in front of it to its level of truthfulness. You're correct. We're not going to know a lot of stuff. Part of that reason drummed into all of us at some point in our life was, and it's true, people's lives hang on the balance of not giving away things. But that's also convenient. It's also convenient to put things in. I mean, if you watched in the last 24 hours, the Iranians are putting out, for them, actually pretty decent graphics showing that the hospital has a whole bunch of tanks and military vehicles under it. And that was a shot at Israel when Israel uncovered the Hamas command headquarters underneath the various hospitals in Gaza. So everyone's playing this game, and the public's in the middle of it with certain levels of interest. But the other part is we're good for about what? Now, 5 minutes, maybe 10. On the phone, you're going through in 5 to 10 minutes. How many swipes does the average person go through just reading the headlines and not actually the story? That's a very powerful tool. If you and when we say government, I'm always going to fall back on, you can use that term, but it doesn't really fit. It's our self-appointed betters. Okay, that's how I look at it. People who are just convinced they know better for the rest of us, and they have various ways that they want to satiate it. And I don't think it's any different than any other time any other empire has had a large part of the populace captivated. The Greeks did it. The Persians did it. The Romans have done it. Obviously, the Nazis did it, with their people. It's very easy to fall into that kind of methodology. I think what you speak to, John, and we talked a little bit about it, this sets down the pattern. I will always fall back and say that I think that what we have, wherever it came from, if it was something that we created from our own hard labors, or if you are a person that believes that we recovered technology at some point, however that works, however that comes out, the money is what's going to control how quick it comes out. That's what's going to always control it. They do not want to destabilize the world economy as it's running. We're going to run on oil until oil is no longer a commodity that we want to use for energy. We want to use it for some other support activity and transition over to the other technology. But we have a lot of people with a lot of nukes that if they don't feel like they're getting their part of the game, unless you can neutralize them and neutralize them quick, and maybe that day is coming, that's going to be a major change. And I think that's what everyone's trying to manage. They're trying to manage change. I think the Manhattan Project is a really good example because everybody focuses on one part of the Manhattan Project, the splitting of the atom. They don't talk about in those dollars, the millions that was spent, the security that was done, the problems that they had, the risks that they took, and how they changed and broke that technology. And just as easily, how other nations with espionage closed the gap with us very quickly.
And the lives lost, right, Commander?
Well, obviously for the use, but I'm talking about from the fact of the Manhattan Project, the people that were involved globally, the things that were going on to make that happen, the kinds of experiments they were doing in major urban areas, because that was where the scientists were. That's where the research facilities were. The infighting that went on about the budgets to make that, to create stuff. The fights that they had about bringing women into the actual refinement of materials that were needed. And they found out that women in the workforce, women actually were better at doing a processing that was going on with plutonium and uranium. Those are all major changes that went on from one project that was going on during World War II.
But two things stand out about that. Number one, it changed the world, and it still influences it today. And the other thing that you left out was, remember, the deception. They actually figured out early on their original theory wasn't going to work, but they ran a whole unit and convinced the Russians that it was real and weren't going to work, even passed on information to them, and they were about 5 years behind when we blew up the first bomb. They closed the gap, but they still were behind.
Well, they closed the gap because they had some folks that were on their side that got the right. But what John's referring to is the very famous leak. They purposely set up blackboards and other places with equations and information that was wrong and flawed, and they knew it. So they made it available to everybody else to go down that path.
Well, they kept the whole team, and then they quietly sequestered another team that actually developed the bomb. And when it exploded, it shocked the world. And that's my point. That's what's going on right now, guys.
I agree.
The only question is, where did we get all this technology from? And that's I'm sorry.
Go ahead, John. I want to give me your thought where you think it came from, because you are telling me that you don't think that we have visitation, we don't have engagement with extraterrestrials. Where do you think it came from?
I think we have visitation. I think it's UAP. And within those 38 papers, which I've said forever, which I'm breaking them down individually one by one now, is the answer. The puzzle's there. They gave it to McCain's committee, which, interesting enough, they went to him right after they got me taken care of, which most people aren't aware of. He was involved in my settlement, everything involved with it, getting me into treatment and everything. And then immediately afterwards, they went to him with these 38 papers, and they were trying to get funding for their exotic technology. And the fact is that he was read in partly because of what went on behind the scenes with my settlement. So he was the guy to go to. And this whole thing is, UAPs are real. They're here. They can travel, they can manipulate space and time, which, like you said at the very beginning, we've admitted we can do it now. So they can manipulate space and time. They're not a hard object like a disk. They can traverse and do things everything that we claim we don't have still, including what the pilots claim they saw in 5 and 15. Condyne supports it, which is a declassified report. I saw the 38 papers before they got sent to McCain, and I guess they were still classified, at least confidential, until a FOIA got them released. But the answers are partly what we're dealing with, and what this group is attacking has to do with the UAPs and what Jacques Vallée's looked at and everything else. It's got nothing to do with disc flying around in the sky and coming from other places. So yes, there's an intelligence there. The question is, which we got into last time, was, is it us from the future? Is it something that came here and seeded us, which is different than what we've been told in religion? But it's here, it's real. The Navy's been studying since 1960. They started mapping all the ley lines, the energy fields, and everything else. I forget the name of the project right now. I've got it written down because I'm working on it. But they started in 1960 looking at everything about planet Earth and all about it, the energy fields and everything else. So I'm not saying it's not ET. I'm just saying it's not ET as we've been conditioned to believe.
Good. I want to make sure I got that out. Thanks.
Thank you. Hey, now, Don, you've seen this Wall Street Journal report and what they're claiming. What's your opinion on this, and what do you have for John?
Well, from my standpoint, it's very simple. There are elements in the United States government that are quite simply nothing more, nothing less than evil sons of bitches. In World War II,
Here we go.
we fell into the abyss, okay? We were fighting fascists, we were fighting Nazis, and we were fighting Imperial Japanese. And within 4 years of that war beginning for the Americans, because actually the real war actually started with the Japanese in the early 30s in China, and then with Nazi Germany when they invaded Poland. And it was the brutality, the barbarism is literally beyond comprehension for probably 95% of every person living in the United States. The barbarism was beyond the pale. When we finally won, these evil elements transported tons and tons of Nazis, okay, Nazi scientists, Nazi war criminals, Nazi intelligence people to the United States under an operation called Paperclip. We went to the Far East. The Japanese had a secret biological warfare program ongoing in China, where they actually tested bio-warfare on Allied prisoners of war and Chinese civilians. Barbarism beyond your imagination. We brought those Japanese over here. Now, why do we do all this? Well, the real fear at that point was the Soviet Union, the communists in Russia. Now, today, people have no conception of what the communists were actually doing. In the 30s, under Joseph Stalin, the Soviet Union had a program where they were trying to destroy the economy of the United States by printing untold millions and millions of dollars of bogus U.S. Currency bills. This was something that was pretty much covered up. In 1941, when the Nazis invaded the Soviet Union, okay, suddenly Joe Stalin, the dictator and mass murderer in the Soviet Union, became dear old Uncle Joe. And we were buddies with Joe until the war was over. But at the end of the war, they knew, they being the elements within the U.S. government, there was an absolutely excellent chance that the Soviet Union, which had all their tank armies, their troops, everything, were ready to go into Western Europe. That's when the Cold War started. So what did our guys do? They started things like a program called MK Ultra. John Burroughs mentioned mind control and mind manipulation. That's exactly what they were doing. But over here, they were experimenting on American citizens without their knowledge. They were dosing people with LSD to see what would happen. This is before anybody even knew what in the hell LSD was. This went on through the 50s, the 60s, the 70s. Now, when my wife and I were publishing UFO Magazine, we covered all of that over the years, and it was terrifying, some of the things that we uncovered and we reported on in the pages of that magazine. And today, listening to what the Wall Street Journal had to say, well, gentlemen, all I can say is that's total and absolute bullshit. And I'll tell you why. In 1947, at the end of June, the first part of July, is when the Roswell event, whatever in the hell the Roswell event was, happened. Now, remember, just a little over 2 years prior to that, we were in the tail end of the Second World War, the largest war in all of human knowledge that we're aware of. Now, prehistory, who knows? There's a lot of evidence to suggest something horrible happened back then. But we're talking about what we know today. And a couple of things happened that told me and my sweet little military mind that things ain't right in Denmark. Something stinks. And what was that? Well, even at the height of the Second World War, with the Manhattan Project, arguably one of the most secret projects in human history, where we went from zero to light speed in developing nuclear weapons, all right? Literally, beginning of World War II, people were still riding cavalry on horses into battle. A little over 4 years later, we're unleashing nuclear fire. Unprecedented, untold. But during all of that, nothing was ever implemented or given to the American public like what happened right after Roswell, the National Security Act. And a couple of other things happened in that same short little time period, right after Roswell. That was, number one, the Air Force became the Air Force. It was taken from the United States Army because prior to, Army had their own Air Force. And the second thing was, even at the height of World War II, we had a secret intelligence organization called the OSS, the Office of Strategic Services. Now, these were the dirty trick boys during World War II, okay? They ran operations like the Jedburgh teams. Now, if you don't know what that is, let me suggest you look it up online because that's a whole program in itself. But suddenly, the Central Intelligence Agency came into existence. So you had the Air Force, the United States Air Force, taken away from the Army. You had the Central Intelligence Agency, and finally, the National Security Act. Now, what is the National Security Act? Well, in the event the powers that be, and I'm talking about right now, today, the powers that be, if they determine something is detrimental to the security, the national security of the United States, they can go to extra legal means to diffuse that, which includes premeditated murder. Okay? If you are deemed to be a national security and imminent threat to the United States, and somebody eyeballs you and says, that guy has got to go, bingo, you're gone. Now, it's like today with Iran, with what's happening with Israel. I spent a lot of time thinking about that. I don't know about you guys, but I've been under artillery bombardments. And what's happening right now in Israel, where the Iranians are firing ICBMs and missiles of all types into civilian neighborhoods, into hospitals, into apartment buildings where innocent civilians are being massacred. Okay. That's something, believe me, you don't ever want to go under. You don't ever want to experience that. So my question is, you know what? Okay. Barack Obama gave those sons of bitches, the Iranians, billions of dollars on platforms back when he took office. Biden did the same goddamn thing. All right. And what did that do? Well, that financed Hamas, that financed Hezbollah, that financed the Houthis. Okay. And what are those guys doing, or what were they doing? Well, one thing they were doing was targeting the targets in the West everywhere. The Iranians never hit it. They considered the United States the big Satan. They considered Israel the little Satan. And what did they chant? Death to America, death to Israel. Now, Israel has been kicking their ass for the last week. But my question is, you really want to cut them off at the nubbins? They got a big, juicy oil field platforms, all kinds of bullshit and natural gas that the Israelis could go in and level if they wanted to. All right. And why they haven't done that, I don't know. They still may, because these guys show no signs of stopping. Trump has gone to the end, as far as I can see, trying to get these crazy mullahs and these other bastards to sit down and discuss a cessation of the warfare that's going on right now. Are we going to get into it? Well, I think ultimately, from my knowledge, my experience, the things that I've done in my life, I can say I'm pretty sure that sooner or later, we're going to be dropping those 30,000-pound bunker busters into those nuclear sites. And I'd like to see it, because God help any of us if they ever get their hands on a nuke. The bottom line is right now, hey guys, and I'm not going to couch it in flowery terms, we're currently sitting in a bucket of shit.
Wow. Okay. John, did you want to respond to that bucket of shit?
Sorry, I had to unmute my mic. I look at it from a different perspective, Don. We play games because we want to keep the industrial military complex going. We can't justify 11 aircraft carriers, billions of dollars that we spend. We're not coming up to $1 trillion a year in budget, okay? And to be straightforward with you, that $1 trillion, if you combine the Chinese and the Russians together, is like 65% higher than what they have every year, but they're catching up with us allegedly. If you take in the rest of Europe, Japan, that operates with us, Korea, South Korea, we've got probably $1.5 trillion. The whole axis of evil has less than maybe between $500 billion and a little more, a little bit over. And yet we're always behind, supposedly. We always need more. We always have to fight. We could eliminate Iran in 3 hours. All we'd have to do is go over there with our bombers, what we have on station right now, and finish them off. We could take out Russia out of Ukraine in about 10 days. Problem is, they could use a nuke on us if we tried to do it. But ultimately, there's no more wars like World War I and World War II. Korea started it, Vietnam expanded it, and then the 2 wars in the Middle East were like the cherry on the top. We don't have an army to fight a war like we did in World War I and World War II. There's only 2 nations in the world that have an army even close enough to fight in a major ground battle, and that would be India and China. But they still don't have the technology or the equipment or the air power, because that's what we've always spent our money on, is air power. So we're not in the bucket of what you say. We could handle things in a matter of days if we wanted to. But my basic concept is we wouldn't have all the industrial military stuff, the fear in the world, if we did. Because then we'd have to go to peace. And nobody in power wants peace, because then they lose control of the masses. That's how I look at it.
John, there's one thing you said that, it hits home. You said that we don't get the whole story. And that's the same thing what the Wall Street Journal has said. And what irks me about this article about the Wall Street Journal is that the lack of transparency to the politicians, to Congress. We had these hearings that everybody was on the edge of their seat, listening to these hearings, waiting to say, oh, my God, we're going to get disclosure. And I agree with Don. I don't think we're ever going to see full disclosure. It's just not going to happen, I think. I mean, people are saying, well, Trump will do it. Well, they said Biden was going to do it. They said Clinton was going to do it. They said Obama was going to do it. And nothing ever came of that. And I have to tell you, I think there's a part in there that is so bad that the American people can't handle that they come up with this story. And I truly believe, after reading this story about 10 times, I think this could have been fed to the Wall Street Journal by our government, just to be able to keep disclosure away. If you look at the way it is, because they lied to Congress. And I don't know the whole laws of Congress, but I think if you lie to Congress, isn't that a crime, John?
Well, they created the Arrow Committee. It was just the next Project Blue Book, and they interviewed certain people. The interesting thing was early on they weren't going to look at anything. Commander, I don't remember how far. They weren't going to go very far back, were they?
No, I think it was something like mid '60s to basically where Blue Book kind of started to shut down, look like where they were wanting to pick up.
Right, and then
on the official track.
And then some reason they went back to Salas's event. So
right.
I mean, the thing is that the whole government. Yeah, but see, the problem is, this is what I got a problem with, Chris. The people that are up there claiming we're going to get disclosure are lying. They know we're not going to get disclosure. I'm not talking about the Congress people. I'm talking about Mellon, Elizondo, Putoff, all those guys that have been up there. Okay, they know we're not going to get disclosure.
Agreed.
Because they were in those positions allegedly, and I say allegedly because we've never seen any proof what Elizondo really did. Everybody else, we know pretty much that what they said they did, they did. What Mellon did, what Putoff did, what Gresh did, some of these other people. They had positions in government. They were involved in different projects. They had access to certain things. They had a high clearance. First of all, when you have that kind of clearance, you're never going to be able to talk about it. You're under NDAs. You're under espionage and everything else. Second of all, they lied, Congress did, about the Whistle Protection Act, because the first thing is, Commander, you know this, even if they claim I got Whistle Protection Act, if it involves national security and I have a handler, I can't talk about it unless I'm cleared to by my handler, okay? Right. And just ask, and I'm just having a senior moment, what was the guy that's living in Russia right now?
Snowden.
He came out with legitimate stuff that we were being spied on, but he didn't have any permission to do it. The Whistleblower Act didn't protect him, and now he's in a communist country, and we haven't heard from him for a long time. But you just can't talk about this stuff, Chris. So
I know.
This whole thing is a lie. They lied.
But my point is that they lied to Congress.
No, they didn't.
No, they didn't, Chris. And we're trying to tell you, they didn't lie to Congress. That was performance art. If you think that was that those questions weren't run ahead of time, that there wasn't layers and layers of people, there was paperwork signed that said that you're covered on that. It was performance art.
There was a Richard Doty Act back in the 80s. They did the same thing and before with Blue Book. Doty was the guy that was out there with counter intel. Lou Elizondo took his place. The very same people that were involved in the 80s stuff and UFO Cover-Up Live were involved in this stuff going forward, other than Christopher Mellon. Okay? So the point being is, and they never lied because they never were under oath. And when they did go under oath, they just said they couldn't talk about certain things. They had to go behind closed doors. Okay? So everything of value went behind closed doors, and Congress is jumping up and down saying they want the truth. Whatever they get told behind closed doors, they don't talk about that. So this whole thing from 17, it did get the public more interested in it. It did get the press to start taking it more seriously. But the whole thing was disingenuous from the beginning. Now, that doesn't mean everybody involved was disingenuous. I think there's people that really believe we were going to get disclosure. but we're not going to get it. And Robert Bigelow was the guy that got the money in the first place, that was behind the Dirts papers and a lot of this stuff, said way back with George Knapp, we're going to get confirmation, we're not going to get disclosure. Confirmation is there's something going on. There's something out there. It's here. It's interacting with humanity, and that's as far as we're going to go. And ultimately, he's in the aerospace business. All these guys are involved in government contract work. They all want their money. Gary Nolan came into this. He holds how many patents right now for exotic technology in that group? They're running a scam down there in Texas, in my opinion, where this guy can go down there in their Skywatcher and call the aliens in, because they've got called on it twice, and it was actually, they ID'd it as satellites and stuff. You can go out there and make people believe something's flying around because you know the patterns and what's going on. But there's never going to be disclosure. So I think the actual honesty about the Wall Street Journal report was they were being somewhat honest. Because the Rendlesham case, which most people don't know, but it's documented, less than 2 nights later, they had people downtown from the Air Force Base talking to the people that were doing what MUFON does here, telling them that UFOs landed at RAF Bentwaters. Well, and the UFO story came out 2 nights later.
All right, so
we have
John,
a question. That's a good segue from the discussion group on Rendlesham. Skywatch, you put it up.
Yeah. John, after all these years, what part of Rendlesham Forest incidents still keeps you up at night? Something that you either can't explain or that you feel the public still doesn't fully understand?
The public doesn't understand that what was going on outside the back gate, and the fact that they seem to poo-poo this, and even people that get involved in these incidents say whatever we saw couldn't be our stuff, or we have no control over it, and that's not true. So ultimately, we're developing this exotic technology that's going to change warfare and the effects on the American people and the world, including it could involve religion and it could involve everything else, because they're ultimately upgrading constantly the EM technology, the 5G, and everything else. And even Elizondo said I always wondered why at first he brought in Havana syndrome. But if you look at the Havana syndrome, it was EM technology. So it all comes down to frequencies and the manipulation of the mind. And just look at the last big event we just had with COVID. People lost their minds.
Oh, yeah.
We're easily controlled, and they don't want to believe what's possible. And I blame the UFO world for the same thing. They don't want to believe what is or couldn't be. They have been conditioned forever, and they keep talking about how, it's nuts and bolts ufology, and it's not. It's a combination of a lot of different things, and they want to completely say anything that's said that doesn't fit their narrative is a lie. And I firmly stand by part of what was in that Wall Street Journal article was truthful. They've used the UFO cover to cover technology advancements. Some of the stuff that's happened clearly was us doing it. But what they don't answer, what these guys that are coming forward with all this information won't answer, is how have we actually advanced? And the other thing is, even Grish, when he testified, provided no evidence. People are sick and tired of trust me, bro.
I don't think they trust anymore.
They don't.
I don't trust the government anymore.
That was the goal, period. What do you believe anymore? What do you believe? I mean, they're slowly just totally and completely tearing apart our belief system and what we could trust and what we believe.
You had the hearings, the congressional hearings, and I could go to this where Kilpatrick go into the Senate hearings, and he says there's absolutely no proof that I've seen of UFO extraterrestrials visiting us. He said that Senator Gillibrand. I watched it. And, I said, here's the guy, Arrow, where he's getting all this information. And he says all the information he has nothing there that shows extraterrestrials have visited us. However, what the Wall Street Journal article says is that he did uncover special access programs while investigating this there. And by George, he's gone. He just went boom, like that. I'm out of here, and went. And I'm going to ask now, Dan, what do you think of all these congressional hearings we had, and then also Kilpatrick, catching a special access program that he's not allowed to talk about, of course. I mean, obviously that, you can't argue that part, but then he leaves unexpectedly, out of that program.
But I think he's still being taken care of. I think he still has a pretty good job. I think he still is making a pretty decent income wherever he's going
sure
right now.
I think at the minimum, he is very well taken care of.
Very well taken care of.
Very fair statement that you can make.
Yeah. I have a question for you, John. In fact, I have a whole page of them here. But
Okay.
I'll start with this one because I think it goes right back to what you opened the show with. Your contention is that these are not nuts and bolts, setting aside the military experiments, the UAP are not nuts and bolts craft. You have not always believed that, right? I mean, back when Rendlesham first happened, weren't you a nuts and bolts guy? And I think for some of the people in UFO world, it might help to know what was it that brought you from nuts and bolts to energy fields and plasma and so forth.
I never was a nuts and bolts guy.
You weren't? Okay.
No, you can go back to Jenny Randall's. And when I met with her when she was in Arizona, and I told her about what I believed took place and what I saw. But the thing is nuts and bolts is going back to the War of the Worlds is how we've been conditioned to believe in what UFOs are. Look at all the TV shows. They're here. They're bugs. They're this. They're that.
Yeah.
They're going to eat us. They come in these craft. They hover over our cities. What was the one? It was the 4th of July one, Independence Day.
Independence Day.
Yeah. They have to be biological. Well, I can't rule out 100% that everything that's been seen over history hasn't had something to do with different types of possibilities. The Native Americans drew pictures on the walls, but you could also go back to the fact that if these UAPs are capable of doing deception, and you just have to go back to Persinger's work with the God's helmet. They can manipulate the mind. They took people and they put the helmet on the people. 8 out of 10 thought they saw God.
Oh, what did he say?
They just they tested these people. They manipulated their mind, and they asked them when they came out of the test, describe what you thought you saw. They thought they interacted with God. Okay, but the point is that if you have this type of an intelligence out there, which Condyne admits is real, and it's never been given any serious consideration. I always found that interesting. It's a report done by the British government. They admit they're real. They're out there. In the report, they said they should be studied further, and they should be weaponized. I got a FOIA from them admitting they were weaponizing it. They're there, and that's what I dealt with. I feel I dealt with, and I feel like a lot of people are dealing with. But again, no one's willing to give that consideration. They've never taken Jacques Vallée's work and Eric Davis's work seriously.
But now there's another witness there at Rendlesham, Jim Peniston.
Yeah.
And he in his testimony, from what I understand, included details like touching a craft and receiving binary code. From what I understand, upstanding guy, and he recalls it differently than you do. How do you explain that discrepancy?
Well, first of all, you go back to Condyne and how all three of us saw it differently from that night we were out there. Second of all, I was out in Sedona and I had an event take place and there were triangular objects in the sky. Okay. The point is, if this intelligence is able to shift shape or whatever you want to call it and throw effects, use time dilation, which is what we're working towards, manipulating time and space. Okay, it's going in our weapon systems. Then it can affect you, like I said with the God's helmet, Padre. You go in close to something like this, and it manipulates your mind. He very well may believe he touched something. Maybe he did, maybe he didn't. When he interacted with this, he may or may not have had a download because there's questions about whether he did or not, or he's been truthful about all this. Okay, but the interesting thing is he claims 100% that it's something from the future, and even in the future where it came from, we still haven't had first contact. So all I'm getting at is My research is working on what some of the top people in the fields have worked on in as far as like Hal Puthoff, Eric Davis, these top scientists, where our technology is going, how it's affecting us, and it's going to affect humanity going forward, how consciousness is now, which was scoffed at, is now being worked on to be put in AI, and including our weapon systems, because AI is starting to conquer us. Okay, we can't control AI. It's learning from us and is starting to take control. Okay, so all this is going on, which very well could be our downfall. So the first question is, why, if the top people involved in this technology, the billionaires, are saying it's a threat and we should slow down, haven't we? And of course, the first excuse is, well, the Chinese won't stop. So are we on a mission to destroy ourselves? Is that preordained? Is this, are we at the, we're at the best we can ever be, and then artificial intelligence is going to take over and eventually destroy us? And why would we want to do that in the first place? Never mind, what is this intelligence and how is it playing a factor in all of our technology and in AI itself, which is becoming a dominating force on top of everything else?
Well, J. Allen Hynek's son says that's where we're going, that we are going to evolve into non-corporeal intelligence.
Right, we're going to lose the container. We're no longer going to be physical, biological. It's our consciousness in the energy field, which is exactly what my hypnosis said back in 1988.
We're jumping, gentlemen. We're at the end of the first hour.
We are. And you know what? Let's open up the next hour with Maelstrom, because I know you had a lot to say about Maelstrom, John, about that technology that happened back there with Solace and everything. All right, folks, we'll be back after a few short messages with John Burroughs. I'll see you on the flip side.
That was a press release today that you're going to talk about all that at the MUFON conference coming up.
No, I think it was somebody named DIPERN.
I already have tickets for it, John.
Oh, dear.
Do you? Okay. I mean, do us well, Chris, when you get up there and talk about this. You know what I mean? Are you going to be at the MUFON conference?
Yeah, I'm going to be there, and I'm actually the head of training for the field investigators training, but I am not giving, folks, I am not giving a lecture, okay? I'm going to be at the bar.
But how did
so
that?
If you want to hear anything what I got to say, you got to go to the bar.
Now, here's my question. Here's my question on deception. How did that press release come out? That was officially released by MUFON. That was going to happen. So,
John,
all these people that bought tickets to hear you, are they going to get a refund now? Is Commander going to get a refund?
I don't care. Listen, I'll refund.
I think Chris is going to have to buy rounds at the bar for all the disappointed people.
Heck, it's a 4-hour drive. Maybe I'll come over if he's going to buy.
Hey, Don, you got to help me here.
What do you want me to do?
Well, just call him a son of a bitch or something.
It was an official release from MUFON. It was a press release.
I know.
Breaking news. Chris Medina was going to talk about EAP technology or EMP technology. But
all I ever needed to know from MUFON, I learned from Walt Andrus back in 1989.
I got a question. I got a question for Padre. Okay.
Yeah. Okay.
Go ahead.
This is me throwing something back in your lap. All right.
Sure.
All right. Do you believe we deserve to know if we're not alone or not, as far as if the implications would shake up the religion world? Do you believe it's possible that we haven't been told the truth? And what I mean by the truth, not we've been lied to completely, but there's been manipulation within religion and how we came to be on planet Earth. And would it be helpful or hurtful if it's possibly true? Would it not cause a big problem?
No, it wouldn't. And I'll tell you why. You have two things when we're dealing with this topic. You have religion, and that is structures put together by people. You have hierarchies and organizations with self-interests. And then you have those who have had a personal encounter with Jesus Christ, who has transformed their lives, who speak with him on a daily basis, who are guided by his Holy Spirit, and are totally unafraid because we already know the truth. We're not alone. That's what's been going on throughout all of history. We are seeing a non-human intelligence interact with the human species. Okay, Bible pretty much covers that. We're seeing a war going on between elements in this unseen world. One side has nefarious interest for us. The other wants to help us. And okay, see that in the Bible. So I'm perfectly at peace with whatever comes out because I know what I believe. I know what I've experienced, and nothing can take that from me.
But how many people are like you, though? We're talking about, see, that was one of the things that was discussed very early on by the commander. Everything that comes out of government shapes society economically and everything else. And it doesn't take much. Just look at what happened with, COVID to totally throw everything into chaos. So
John, let me jump on real quick. Bring up a really good point. COVID. What did the government do? Strip joints, liquor stores, gambling facilities open, churches closed.
Mm-hmm.
Interesting that you draw that parallel, because I'm going to say that I think people of faith, people that have faith, are smart enough to realize the flaws of the man-created structure that the Padre is talking about, and have connected up with what they have in a faith-based system, what they understand to be God.
Okay, but so how many people are on the planet right now? How many billions?
8 billion.
Okay. How many people of those 8 billion are like you?
That's a good point. The Bible specifically says many are called, few are chosen. It says that in the end, not everybody who calls me Lord, Lord will enter the kingdom of heaven. Listen, I'm not going to argue at all that a tremendous amount of atrocities have been done in the name of the Christian faith, and also of the Islamic faith and of the Hindu faith and the Buddhist faith. I mean, everywhere you look, where people are involved, they're flawed. But we are confident, those of us who truly believe and have this knowledge in our heads, and we carry it out in our hearts and every day, we're not afraid. There's nothing that could be said to dissuade us. And that is why, to the commander's point, a lot of times when you see totalitarians come to power, one of the first things they do is go after the Christians and try to get them out of the way, because there's nothing more annoying to somebody who's trying to clamp down or take over than a group of people who's at peace, comfortable with what they believe, knows that they're right, and is totally unafraid of them.
I mean, isn't that first two questions? Number one, you believe you're right. And what I mean by that is there are variables that you could have been misled by. And I'm talking about if there's a devil, the devil can actually interfere. But here's my next question. Why did the Jewish people destroy Jesus Christ? Why
they didn't. They didn't. The Romans were the ones that crucified Christ.
But the Jews,
I don't want to jump on the theological expert that's here, but it had to happen. If you get into this particular part of the faith, it had to happen. All those people that did that or were involved had to play that part.
Okay, but the point being is where I'm trying to go with this. Most people don't understand any of that. They're easily misled. They're being manipulated more and more by the press, by false beliefs. And even though a lot of them are good people, they have nowhere to turn. You say just turn to God. Well, you know what? Let's go back to where we go with how they've been so misled by religion. Because
which God? Because there's a hell of a lot of gods.
Do you remember Paul Harvey? Do you remember what Paul Harvey did? He did.
Yes, but he's not a god. Paul Harvey was not on the god list.
He said, "Why are there so many gods?" He only believed in one God. There was only one God. Why was there so many religions? Why were there so many religions? But to manipulate man. So what I'm getting at is, if religion's a particular item that would not necessarily upset you, and a group of people that you're aware of and around the world, but it would upset the majority if all of a sudden it came out that what we were told about religion wasn't factual.
But John, really, you're looking at the world at this time, and you really believe that the vast majority of people are concerned about God?
I think yes.
No, that's a yes or no question there, Senator. I honestly,
I don't think they're thinking about God right now.
I look at this world right now, and I don't think a tenth.
I think it's been blocked. You want to know where I was going with this?
Sure.
We have learned how to manipulate that part of us that will never allow us to figure out what the Padre has. So however he's got around all of this, you need to get it on some of what he's taken. Because the ultimate matter is that this world is sitting on, is what Don said earlier, is we are sitting on probably the biggest time in humanity, whether we survive or not. Because we're so easily manipulated now with technology and AI and everything else, and it's blocking our ability to find the creator, however you want to believe whoever the creator is, and they're shutting that down. And the fact is if all of a sudden it comes out about what, it doesn't matter what people believe or don't believe. They've been conditioned to believe in the way we were created. They've been conditioned to believe what UFOs are. They've been conditioned to believe how money's supposed to work. We've been conditioned. We could go through so many things that we've been conditioned for that aren't factual and aren't true and are easily manipulated. All the stock market is going to Las Vegas and playing craps.
John, you do have a point there. Let me just say you do have a point, because there you see the conditioning in the Middle East, but you see it here in the United States very heavily. Look at the cities that are on fire. People are not really talking about it right now because of what's going on in the Middle East, but there's still riots in Los Angeles, Chicago, New York. I mean, how many years now we had summers where they're burning buildings, they're destroying property, they're killing people. I mean, murder rate up in Los Angeles is up 38.5%. We
go to Chicago, where I'm from. But here's the other interesting thing. I live in a blue state. The people that live in blue states just continuously pay more and more of their hard-earned money to the government. Mm-hmm. And they're willing to vote for people like that in the national level to continue to take our tax dollars and use it the way the elite want to use it. Mm-hmm. And they're against some of the stuff that's being presented now, lower taxes, lower this, lower that. So my point is every single thing that goes on, we're being manipulated now. We're past that. We're past the point of no return where we're easily manipulated, and it's only going to get worse. It's not going to get better unless something changes it. And I'm not sure what that is.
John, I would just like to say thank you for asking me that question. And I knew where you were going with that. And you are correct that the power structure and hierarchies that exist in many denominations would definitely, they would sacrifice themselves to make sure that information didn't get out. But that's why I pastor a non-denominational church. I'm not affiliated with anybody. And I'm not part of a power structure that can tell me to shut up. I can say what I want to say from my pulpit, and I preach the truth right out of the Bible. But no, you're correct that I could see where people would be concerned. And it's not just, I'll say, the Christian church. I mean, I'm sure that other religions who also have eschatological viewpoints about the end times would be shaken up by that kind of a revelation. And yeah, it doubtlessly is being considered by those in authority.
John, I want to ask you a question that came from chat here. I'm going to put it up here. Where have you heard about consciousness connections or sending AI? You talked a little bit about consciousness before. Can you elaborate on that, John?
Sure. I was around these guys. They were talking about it. Davis put off and stuff when I went down and visited them. And there's articles out there. I don't have them right in front of me. I've got it in my research file that I'm working on. The AI, it just came out about 3 or 4 days ago. I forget who said it. It was a prominent guy, said that AI is actually smarter than man is now. And that's just all the data it's collecting and bringing it together, and it can outthink man and it can outreact man. We are having issues with and the commander can speak to this maybe a little bit because a lot of it's classified. We no longer, like the drones, they can be easily separated from satellites and ground control. That's what they've learned how to do. So they no longer are controlled. They have their self-learning technology. They hover above targets. They self-learn. They know how to penetrate radars, defense systems, and they pick out a target and attack it. But the problem they're having is the target package that they are supposed to target, they may override that and go attack something else.
Well, that's the thing. Can AI have a conscious? Yeah, I mean,
no, right now they're not able. AI has not become its own consciousness yet, but they're afraid it may. But we're trying to interact human consciousness with AI to control.
When you talk about AI, okay, and this is going to sound trite or like I'm trying to make a joke out of it. I'm not. But anything you want to know about AI, all you've got to do is go back to a 1984 science fiction thriller called The Terminator. That is all you need to know about AI and potentially what it's capable of.
But Don, you do understand this, right? That was purposely dropped on the American public. A think tank, I've uncovered a lot of evidence, including I had a big fight with Davis, Putoff, and all these guys. And it was interesting because I found some NASA think tank stuff on advanced propulsion systems. And I cut and pasted some of it out of there and presented it to Putoff, who kicked it to Davis, because Putoff, anytime it was going to get into something that could in the classified world, he kicked it to one of his underlings. And Davis came back and wanted to know where I got conspiracy stuff. And I just laughed. And by now I had an audience. Valet was on this email and all this stuff was going on. And I said, right from this NASA think tank site. And Davis, we were going back and forth really heavy, and then it got quiet for about a minute. And he said, oh, yeah, I'm aware of that. And I'm aware of who worked the project, and I've worked.
Look, everybody you just mentioned, Davis, Putoff, all these guys, Kit Green, they're the usual suspects. They've been in the middle of this morass from day number one.
Because
I don't believe a damn thing any of them say. Not a thing.
And you know why that's the fact? Because they're all part of the deception that's trying to manipulate the enemy, just like they did with SDI and all these other technologies that we have, just like the Manhattan Project, because they're trying to get the enemy to outguess what we have and how to counter it, just like Bearden discovered certain things that the Soviet Union was doing, and we tried to figure out how to counter it, which led to Project Stargate. There's a lot of money going back and forth wasted on which technology will work, which won't work. Meanwhile, they are uncovering certain technologies that work, but they're never going to openly talk about it because it goes under the SAP programs that's funding their lifestyle. And they're disingenuous when they go in front of Congress.
There are betters, don't you know, John? There are betters.
But you're right, they're in the middle of all this, but they are involved. Do you know who Andy Marshall is, Don?
I'm sorry, say again?
Do you know who Andy Marshall is?
No.
Okay, he ran the Office of Net Assessment for decades. You know who he is, right, Cobra?
Yep.
Okay, he was involved in all this stuff with advanced technologies and where it's going to play out going into the future. Including think tanks, he had the top think tank. He wrote the Soviet doctrine, which brought the Soviet Union down. He trained all the Secretary of Defenses right up the gates. And he just recently passed. And it's in the book, and no one knows who Andy Marshall is. He went by Yoda, and yet no one even knows the net assessment, what they were involved in, what they were doing, what this guy did, who worked underneath him, what technologies they were looking at, what they were developing. They were even looking at what a UAP is and how to utilize it, and everything else. We're still stuck in bullets, conventional warfare, okay? And the world's about to see a major change because we can't afford it. What's a missile cost now, Commander? Each missile they fire to intercept
all the millions of dollars.
Yeah, We can't afford it. Even with just writing blank checks, we can't afford it much longer. We're going to have to go to this technology. The Israelis just talked about how they're shooting down these drones with lasers. Did you see the picture of that Italian soldier holding that gun, that EMP gun? That just leaked out. There's a lot of stuff changing right now. Okay? And they're even hitting, the BBC just did an article a day ago, Padre.
Yep.
The BBC Science Division says we've been lied to about how we became to exist on planet Earth.
Wow.
So this is starting to happen. The problem is it's not going to phase you.
No.
But what's it going to do to the majority of society?
Well, they'll have to make a choice. Are they going to believe or not the way I do or otherwise? And sadly, I mean, the scripture says most of the world is going to go the other way. Most of them will fall in like good little soldiers, do as they're told, not rock the boat, and just follow the crowd. But, you said you want some of what I'm on. For anyone who's watching, my email's on the screen. I'd love to talk to you about that. I did want to bring this up, though, and it's now shifting gears totally, but it has to do with something that's bothered me about the energy fields that supposedly we're putting around these aircraft that we're experimenting with, warp bubble. And this is for Commander or John to speak to this. I've heard that time inside this moves differently inside the bubble than outside the bubble. And I'm looking at it from an air defense parameter here. First, are we talking about something that is like a solid, let's call it, orb of energy that the craft or the person sits in? Or is it a projected like bubble where it's nothing but air inside? And if a missile or something is fired at a craft that's enveloped in this, because of the time dilation, is this a reason why we can't shoot them down? Because inside the missile's either already gone by or it'll be gone long before the missile gets there.
Go ahead, Commander.
Yes.
You're in this more than I am.
I'll say yes. So there's a bunch of layers to peel on that. If you look, and it was wrapped, and that's wrapped in some kind of capability, you're going to have to still have air and other things going on for the engines to work. So when we talk about something being enveloped, often what I would say is that you're looking at something much more like the Tic Tac kind of vehicle, where it's no longer using curved aerodynamic airfoils to create lift and manipulate lift to overcome gravity. You're doing other things. Mm-hmm. But I will say this, even in the most low-end spectrum of where we operate 99% of our flight activities, there were experiments that proved that aircraft flying at their top speeds with identical clocks, one on the Earth, one in flight, there was time shift. Okay, there was time shift. Very, very small shift. But there was noticeable time shift that was recorded on that. So the easy answer that I can give based on nothing that I've seen that I couldn't talk about because I don't work in those kinds of areas, what I see that's coming up is if you have, and this is one of the reasons I think that we haven't broke through because we have not quite mass produced, or it's going to be too disruptive and we don't have enough of it. You create, like people always say, well, I believe there was operators inside the Tic Tac. I don't think it was completely remote control. And this latest turn in the war proves that having a human operator in there, because on John and I break on the AI thing. AI is, in my world, being well oversold. And I'll give you a simple example why I don't think it's working that well. Maybe it's because what is on the top end isn't available to come out yet. But on the lower end, you can't have self-driving vehicles because they can't write enough code, even with the AI producing its own code, to know what to do when it drives into an intersection and someone walks up and puts their hand up like this. because they have not been able to develop enough code lines in there and processing power in there to make it practical. Now, we may have broken that.
Can I ask you a question, though? That's
Sure.
not being driven by quantum, is it?
Well,
No.
probably not, and that's my point.
No.
But
Yeah.
quantum requires power sources that don't make it easy to put on there. So my point is, when you get into something like a Tic Tac and you have a plasma field around it, you're doing this. And it's, even if it's not manned, if it's remotely operated or if it's under AI sentient control, you still probably want to have something inside it that's going to do something. Either it's going to project some kind of an energy beam or it's going to drop ordnance. Because dropping ordnance is still a very handy way to do business in this basically sticks and stones world that we're slowly crawling out of. And I agree with John that we're at that precipice. But everything we do, we tend to do to make it better for us to shoot a projectile of some kind, an explosive and a projectile. We create very intricate systems to do that better and better and better.
And if you look at the spiritual and philosophical side of that, warfare, since its very inception, is designed to insert something foreign into the envelope of human existence. Whether it's a fast-flung sling stone, a spear, an arrow, a bullet, it's to break up the integrity of the human shell. And a lot of times it's phallic in nature, and you can get into the whole life-death thing with that. But that's a whole other layer, maybe for another show.
To just kind of wrap the answer just a tiny bit.
Yeah.
If you are operating inside this, you would most likely not be detectable. That's one of the reasons you're going to expand that kind of energy. So if you're going to put a plasma field, you're going for speed so that you are not able to be targeted easily. Because if you can control speed, that means you can also slow down and then rapidly accelerate again, which again, we saw with the Tic Tac, right? All those things, hovering flight over the water, disrupting water, rapid movements, everything went around. But in my mind, the reason that we haven't mass produced that, very disruptive to the whole world. And I think our own best enemy, and I put quotes around the best, is that the military industrial complex doesn't want to move too fast because we don't know how we're going to stabilize it to the stuff that's still sitting around that is extremely destructive. We still have people that if they find out, there used to be a line used in a lot of movies and it was used, should we attack now before we get any weaker?
Well, let me ask you all military guys how this works. Does the military industrial complex make its money mostly on sales or on the maintenance and upkeep after the sale of equipment?
Neither.
Explain, please.
You make money by constantly getting input, tax dollars to keep creating stuff. That's how they're making money. Sure. Okay. When you get your infusion, let's say we put 150 million, a pitiful amount in today's world, because we're going to go do that. Not all that money is going into making more beans and bullets and shells and all that. That is keeping the lights on, and some of it gets siphoned off to the R&D side that's coming up with the next great thing.
But, I mean, we're still flying airplanes that are older than Don. I mean, what? I don't get it. Why are we?
Did I just get slammed?
No, not at all.
It was with a lot of affection. A lot of affection. And
for your information, the B-52 made its appearance in 54, if I'm not mistaken. I was born in 50, so no, it's younger than I am.
I apologize, Don. You actually look much younger than your age. Shall we move then to this next question that I had? And this is for John. These plasma, I don't want to call them objects, call UAP. They seem to vary in intensity in terms of almost translucent and super bright. What do you think causes that? And is it an environmental effect, or is it something whatever is controlling it is doing?
Well, that's one that you have to understand. Is it us, or is it, the intelligent UAP that we haven't created? You also have to, like you said, look at the environment where it's at. And I'll go into what the commander talked about, the Tic Tac and stuff.
Sure.
Commander, where have the majority of these Tic Tac sightings taken place?
Over the ocean.
And in what locations?
Oh, most of it, although the most publicized was on the South California coast, mid-California coast.
Right. And what sits down in that area?
Well, there's a couple major underwater and overwater facilities and testing ranges that are out there.
Right. Catalina Island, right?
Right.
To
be fair, there has been a lot that's been reported, although not well documented, so you can't do a comparison on the East Coast as well. And again,
it sits down in Florida around Eglin Air Force Base.
That's the one on the Gulf of America side. I'm talking more of the AUTEC coming up the East Coast from the AUTEC Bahama line. There was a lot of activity there. And AUTEC is the Navy's Area 51, as it's sometimes affectionately called.
Right.
But they're both major undersea warfare areas.
And stealth areas.
Correct.
Right. So that is the thing that I'm looking at the hardest right now. How do you distinguish between real, and man-made? How far have we advanced? The puzzle pieces are there in the white world to get a good idea, but it's really the black world that you're never going to get into unless they declassify more of the stuff. What's interesting is a lot of the stuff that we've looked at prior is disappearing now. It's no longer on the internet. It's not available. And the factor is they never really wanted people to go off the nuts and bolts UFOs into the UAP technology and what it really is, until this group came forward and started, nibbling at the corners of all this. But if you've noticed, they'll still come back and talk about biological beings and craft that we have recovered. But the problem I have with all this again is, where's the proof? Mm-hmm. Where is some evidence? You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. That arts parts stuff is very interesting because the Army bought it from To the Stars, who bought it from Linda Moulton Howe, and they tested it. And they were working on it. Then they came back and said it's from here, not from somewhere else. But they said they want to continue to work with To the Stars. Well, you usually don't get duped like that and then say you still think it's a good organization and you want to keep working with them. So my guess is probably whatever Arts Parts is a key to all this. Whether how it got here is another whole story. I mean, Eric Davis talked about how we left stuff on the moon, right?
Right.
So if how many thousands of years or however they got here, they may have left some technology here that we've uncovered. There's a lot of things that are there, but you have to be open to all of this. You can't be narrow-minded about the way we've been conditioned to believe in. And it goes back to what we just talked about. We're being conditioned to believe. Our belief system is ruined right now for the majority of the people.
John, I'd like to ask you a question, and I want to just pivot a little bit here because we were talking about weaponry, exotic weaponry. And one of the things that they reported is this weaponry that's an electromagnetic generator pulse. It creates an electromagnetic pulse. And they kind of say that this is what happened at Maelstrom. What's your take on that?
The SAGE radar system was involved in creating UAPs. The radar system itself is what started the whole Foo Fighters and everything else, including the plasma cannons that the Germans were working on.
The Germans did have a plasma cannon, right?
They had a plasma cannon that they were shooting up at the aircraft. Okay? So the fact of the matter is this is when, well, actually I was told by somebody inside that this was really something they started looking really closely at back in the 30s. And the Germans were there. They were ahead of all of this. So the first question is who are these guys? Mm-hmm. How come they were so much farther advanced in all of this than the rest of the world is? What made their scientists better? And then you have to ask the fact that SAGE was tied directly into the missile launch systems. The entire northern tier bases that had their encounters were all tied into the SAGE system. All of these different SAGE radars were tied into the missile launch systems, and over the horizon radar was up there. So they were all tied into the system. Now the question is, were these UAPs, did we create them? And did we create these pulses with the Marx generator, which is evolved? It's small now. They're putting it in aircraft. They're utilizing it in the ships. In fact, Commander, tell me I'm wrong. Did the Stennis get delayed because it's being equipped with that type of technology?
John, if I knew, I couldn't even say.
Okay, I understand, but the point being is that all these aircraft carriers that are going in and getting refitted right now are getting the newer ones in the Nimitz class are all have this capability in it now. The lasers and systems, the Zumwalt class does, and the Ford does, and all the new ones going forward do. Everything's changing.
Yeah, that's been reported in the news, John, about destroyers getting the new laser systems.
Yeah, but I'm just saying it's all there. The question is, it all ties back to the UAP, and then it ties back to what Don said. These very same individuals have been working on this. I mean, Putoff started out at the DIA and Stanford Research Institute. And guess who's been involved in all this?
Actually started out at Scientology.
No, he started out with the Navy. I'm talking about he was in the Navy, went to the DIA, and then left the DIA and went to SRI.
But before all that, he was a Scientologist, a very high level Scientologist.
That was later. That wasn't back in the 60s.
No, that was before.
That isn't what I found, but okay, fair enough. The bottom line is these guys are there because they've been on the cutting edge of where we're going to end up. And just like the Stargate program they ran. So it's there. And unfortunately, part of this whole thing is countermeasures. I do have a question, Commander, because I cannot get a straight answer. Do you know the latest fighters, when they do that turn and they swivel around and there's that something that they create? What does that affect?
So when you depressurize, when you do such a radical maneuver and they're using the engine thrust to vector, you'll see the same thing happen when a plane G's up quite a bit. If the atmosphere has enough moisture, you're creating lower pressure on the upper part surface of the wing or the airfoil to the bottom part. When you rapidly drop.
Did we lose him? I think we lost him.
That's why you see those famous pictures of when they break the sound barrier. When you break the sound barrier, you'll see cones form up on some pictures that capture them.
It's that main internet, Chris.
Yeah, I don't think they want Commander to talk.
You're breaking up, Commander.
Well, you guys have been popping on my screen. Can you hear me now?
Yeah. All of a sudden, when you start talking about technology, the last 3 times you start breaking up.
All I'm saying is you create a lower pressure, a physical lower air pressure on the upper part of the wing when you're maneuvering like that. If there's water vapor present, that's why you will see it rapidly show up. And it'll pop up in there and then almost as quickly when the...
I don't think they want him to talk about it.
Right when he gets to the good part, he
shot him right down.
Every time you cut out, I'm serious. You're talking about regular stuff, boom, boom, boom. I asked you about a couple of different things, and right away when you start getting into the technical stuff, you cut out every time.
Oh, yeah.
So it's the water vapor becoming visible because the pressure is dropping on the wing when you're maneuvering at that high load like that. That's what's causing that.
That's not a plasma.
No.
That's not a plasma effect at all, right?
No.
Okay. Now, what about when they went to supersonic speed? Is that manipulating space and time?
In a way, yes, it is. Any one of us can manipulate space and time, especially by the constraints of what we call time, when we cross the international date line. If I go across the United States and I change.
There he goes again.
There he goes. I'm telling you, every time he's about ready to say something important, he gets cut out and stuff. All right, hey, John, I want to ask you about your book until Commander gets back. You wrote this book. What made you want to write this book with Toby?
Well, it's 45 years. I've worked really hard on trying to understand what happened to us. The one thing I was guilty of, Padre, wasn't that it was nuts and bolts craft. Mm-hmm. I really, the three of us the night we had our experience, we couldn't explain it. Mm-hmm. So when we came back, we were trying to figure out what we were going to tell people, number one, and not sound crazy. But number two, if it's not us, what is it? But it never tied back to, I thought it was War of the Worlds or, a saucer or something like that. So over the years, I've met a lot of different people that have really been interested in me, studying me, looking at my DNA, my mind, all these different things, how I survived my encounter, and talking about advanced technology, reading different articles and papers and seeing how the government slowly leaks stuff out. The first time when the interest was shown to me was 88 when I did hypnosis. The guy that came down, I didn't know anything about him at the time because you didn't have access to now you can research people. He actually ran a company called the Brubaker Group, but he originally started working with the Learjet, transferred to GM, worked with Kit Green there. Then he went and started his own company, and he was the one that brought me into hypnosis, which was government controlled, which I didn't know until later. So I wanted to understand what it was, never mind the fact that it almost killed me. And then why is what happened to me so secret? I mean, I don't believe for 1 minute that the fact that they're keeping what happened to me secret or to what happened at Rendlesham secret because aliens visited Rendlesham. It's there. There's something deeper they're covering up. And it's starting to lead to our technology, our advancement in technologies, what plasmas are and everything else. And just for the case, I can't even get a copy of my DD Form 214. I've got another congressperson involved right now that I didn't understand why it got denied the first time. It didn't make a lot of sense until I got back what they was denied on. I applied for it, was blown off, just like the first time when I was trying to get my medical records. So I went to the congressperson that was my representative. You have to fill out a release form so they can represent you. I also had to fill out my request form again. So I filled them both out, sent them to the Congress's office. They submitted it to the record section. They came back and denied my request, not based on my request for my DD Form 214, and I did ask for medical records again just to see what would happen. But because my signature wasn't right for the request for the congressman to represent me. They accepted my request, but they wouldn't help me because of the fact that it didn't appear the congressman was supposed to represent me. That's the same thing that happened the first time. And then they play games, and then eventually the aide with Kyle was very good at understanding how this stuff is covered up in the secret, the classified record section. And then we advanced it, and then McCain broke the door open. But I want to know what happened to us, why it's so secret 45 years later. And I'm putting this all together and including the second book's going to talk about all the people who were involved, like the old hats at Don Collum and everything else, all the stuff that went on. I mean, did you all see the movie Phenomenon with John Travolta?
Oh, yeah.
That was me. That was the guy, the doctor that was working on him is Kit Green with me and Gary Nolan. They were doing a lot of the same stuff to me and trying to figure out about me exactly what was in that movie Phenomenon. And I'm going to lay this all out. So I guess my question is, we got a few minutes left. Do you guys just think they're just trying to keep people from knowing we're not alone? Or is there something deeper to this?
Well, I personally think that there is a core secret to this phenomena, regardless of the acronym you use, UFO, flying saucer, flying disc, UAP. There is a core secret. And whatever that secret is, now this is my opinion, right? But it's based on a lot of years of beating around this block, that it's surrounded by a special access program because, so the word goes, there is something so troubling to this phenomenon that the powers that be are afraid it would basically upset world balance if it became widely and publicly known.
Next.
I think it's deeper, and I think it's all interconnected.
How so?
It goes back to on the more lightly part, as long as I'm left on the air before, I guess, NSA or whoever else is unhappy with me tonight. I remember sitting down with UFO people and asking about cryptids and why you have Bigfoot phenomena that seems to go around it. At one of the little get-togethers, and the guy looked at me, we don't talk about that here. Now, you want to talk about religious, sectarian kind of stuff. Pretty funny. So I guess if you're going to apply that, I'm kind of in that Unitarian kind of church on this subject. I think, as Don said, that there is a core part of it. I think it is all tied together. I don't think the phenomena that we're experiencing are separate. I think the part that John has been talking about, that the flying disc, the physical flying UFO disc, has been overblown and it's being used against to continue to keep and obfuscate the information. And the other part is you can only put so much candy up into the and then people get tired of that and they look for something a little bit more substantial. And that's what happens. And that's what I think all these last sets of hearings were, to try to supposedly say, okay, we're not going to give you, sugar-based information. We're going to give you some real information. And quite honestly, it actually probably did more damage than it did do good, because I got into so many different arguments with people about what was being said. This guy is absolutely telling the truth. And then you watch that guy, a whole group of people start to drop out information that never should have been released out of personnel records and files that's going on, gets spread around. And then some of the stuff that gets spread around isn't true, but it's laced up to true facts. And then all these other sub things going on. And if you step back and look at it and go, there's someone who's pulling the levers on this one, or in the great line from, what was it, Plan 9 from Outer Space? Pull the strings. Ed Wood's great movie, Pull the Strings. That's what's going on. I think it is much deeper than if it's just something as simple as extraterrestrials and where our technology is. And it's connected. And when I mean connected, the unified field theory that science and physics is working on applies into all the other parts of our human endeavor.
Am I next? All right, I'll tell you this, John. Well, first of all, I kind of agree with Don and Commander. I think there's something deeper to this whole thing that they're afraid to let out. But I also think that there's a lot of stuff that I think with these special access projects that they connect to the ufology, they're getting a lot of money, and that lot of money could be taken as fraud. And I think there's a lot that, let's say, has been pocketed into companies or people's pockets and things of that nature. And I think they're only going to let out so much because, one, once you get that little crack in, as we've seen with Elon Musk and the whole government, you get that little crack saying, hey, whoa, there's something here. Next thing you know, USAID and this program, that program, people are going rampant with fraud and stuff that we didn't even think would be happening, but it happened. I don't think the ufology field is anything different when it comes to that. I think the money has a big play into it. I also think that they've given you disclosure as much as they are. When they turn around, they say, hey, we've manipulated time and space. And I've said this over and over, but nobody cares. Nobody really brings it up. Nobody says, oh, my God, look what the White House put out. It's just when Commander Don and Padre and stuff we talked about, Grush turned around, people have been murdered over this thing. Nobody gave a damn. I mean, I don't know what people are waiting for. The information that's been out so subtle, they put it out so subtle that it just goes over everybody's head. And I think that there's something that is nefarious to this whole project, whether it's human or non-human, that they say we can't let out. Either people are going to go to jail over it, and they don't want that to happen, or they think maybe they're eating us or something. I don't know, but it could be something like that.
A little salt and pepper.
Hey, listen, you know what? Ever since I started investigating this ufology stuff, I've seen more crazier things than you could shake a stick at.
Well, what? Give us a crazy thing, Don.
Well, just like what Don will tell you, we've known there's been human mutilations. There's been people who reported abductions where they've seen body parts. There's been, abductions where people have come back different. There's been unexplained things that have happened to people where their lives have been just terrified and destroyed over this thing.
Okay, so let's take that as truth. Somebody's got to be accountable for this.
Well, that's just it. Let's say John is right, and this is all neurobehavior experiments on people. You think the government's going to come out and say, yeah, we've been screwing with all these people, just like MK Ultra. Ha ha, here we are. They're not going to do that. They still don't really acknowledge it.
Can I ask you a question, Chris?
Sure.
What if the phenomenon is screwing with us? What if it's purposely keeping us from really remembering or totally understanding what it is? I mean,
it could be. Suppose it's demonic, John. There's been things that turn around and say it's demonic. There's people in the Pentagon who believe that this is demonic.
Is it possible?
Goes in so different direction. Oh, and there's the Padre. Every one of the panels here have said that in some way, shape, form, there's a spiritual content to this ufology. Am I right or wrong? Correct me if I'm wrong, guys. And stuff. So if there's there's a spiritual connection to this, all right, it's something that nobody's leading toward. I don't hear the Vatican coming out and saying this is the proof we got it because it is spiritual people. I would think the Vatican would be the first one to come out, but they don't. Right, Padre?
Well, I'm not affiliated with Vatican.
I know, but I mean,
I was passed over for Pope recently, and that kind of hurt my feelings. But in any case, I
put my vote in for you.
Thanks, I appreciate that. The smoke that came out of my chimney was a different color, I guess. No, I agree that this is about control. And what I sometimes struggle with is who is doing the controlling? And then I start to ask myself, is that even a spiritual thing? So mind manipulation, who's the puppet master? Who is the one who is influencing the minds and to what end?
Padre, I want to quickly interrupt you because I want to make a remark that we brought it up earlier. Mm-hmm. Look what happened during COVID. Information came out, and then self-appointed betters amongst us were ready to kill people because they weren't standing 6 feet apart.
Yeah.
People were denying people if they didn't wear a mask to get the most basic services. I'm not talking even like getting into like food and restaurants. I'm talking about getting your groceries. And of course, if you made the remark like I did, if your masks work, why do I have to have one on? Then you really watch somebody going to work. Okay.
No, or even better yet, the COVID thing when if you get the shot, you won't get COVID, right? Well, did you have the shot? Yeah. Well, then why do you care about my mask?
And let's not forget this. You could not meet in a church, but if you wanted to burn down your city in a riot, that was perfectly fine activity.
Yeah. And let's have the planning meeting at the strip joint because that was allowed to be open.
Right. So, yeah. And I just
get over strip joints.
My point out of all that is you posed a question. You made a remark that said, how could this go on? I think that if you have an element that just produces this, people by nature will, if they don't have whatever it takes to see the light versus the darkness, are going to jump very quickly to go into this realm because they believe. And John, this is kind of bouncing back to you. You said it last week, and it's come up lately this week. People think this is it. We're going to slip the mortal coil in some way. Okay.
No, there's no doubt. Even if we destroy ourselves biologically, the consciousness has got to go somewhere.
That is correct.
And that, John, was confirmed today in a post by the world's most intelligent man, Dr. Young-Hoon Kim in Korea. He's South Korean. And he himself put a thing on X explaining about the consciousness and how it's involved in this life.
IQ measured 275 plus.
Okay, but then here we go, because we have our answer right here somewhat, right?
Mm-hmm.
Consciousness leaves the body, goes out into the collective, the continuum, whatever you want to call it. It goes out somewhere, comes back later. When it goes back into the next body, it doesn't remember everything or it's not allowed to let the brain of the body, because it's the energy field that comes in that drives the computer and the DNA that says the ones and zeros, it's the code, right? So it comes back, and the new body it goes into doesn't remember everything the consciousness experienced before. So if that is true, then it's very well could be the UAP itself is keeping us from understanding our past for some reason. And it's keeping us from understanding whether we're alone or not for sure, how we were created, and what's going to happen to us going forward. Is that not possible?
Absolutely possible.
No.
Padre, I'm sorry, but
it's okay, John. I love you.
You think you've cracked this, and what if you're wrong?
I'm not.
But you don't know that for sure.
Sure I do.
That's absolute, and no one goes anywhere with being absolute. There's always a variant or some kind of curveball that's there that you're not aware of that might change something a little bit.
Being the off to the side here just a bit, you're both saying the same thing.
Yeah,
there are variances in your philosophy and your theory, John, that the Padre, and I'm not speaking for him, but understanding our Christian faith, that tell us, no, this is what happens here. But I will say this over and over again, because I have been with very strong religious people who say because it's not in a version of a book that they read, it doesn't exist. And I will show them things in versions of books that I have read that are religious that indicate to me this is it. I would never put my fingerprint on what God is capable of doing. And I'm always going to say that. So although some people will say, oh, no, there's no way there can be reincarnation. I don't think it. I sure as hell hope it doesn't happen to me. But it does seem to have that kind of thing that you're going to come back and you're going to have less. I've read cases outside where it seems like that a soul did, hung around. I don't know what God's plan is. That's my bottom line. So I think you both are working the same street, maybe a different side.
Leave it to this way: whatever God's planning, we're going to screw it up.
No,
So
that's
that's 100%, John.
we're gonna completely screw it up. Now,
Yeah.
I'd like to say one thing before we close, and then Chris, if you got a question. War in the Shadows. We're about to make a major announcement about a documentary we're putting together that's going to involve major players that were involved in the Rendlesham incident. And it's going to go into the human factor about how our government is letting down military personnel that we were definitely had an encounter with the UAP. I'm being absolute, Padre, so you can hold that against me. We definitely had an encounter with something that's most likely a UAP. It definitely affected us. There's other people that are being affected by this. We're being lied to by our government, and we're not being taken care of by our government. So, fall war in the shadows. So, Chris, did you have anything that you wanted to ask me before we close tonight?
No, I think we covered it all, John, with the 3 interviews that we did with you. And I will tell you, I just want you to let you know that I will not be speaking at the MUFON Symposium. So you make sure you can take that.
I want my money back. I wanted to hear what I was researching.
Call headquarters. I don't have it.
Hey, do me a favor.
Tell you, I'll be giving a lecture at the bar about the evils of drinking.
You're a cop, right? You're a cop. Find out how come that came out. Well, who leaked that out? Who put that out?
I can't tell you that on the air because I get thrown out of MUFON. So how's that?
Okay,
all right, folks.
Guys, thanks for having me on. I really appreciate
John,
it.
It's a great day.
We'll do this again soon, towards the end of the year.
That's our show for tonight.
Don, good to see you, brother.
Good to see you guys. Take care, everybody. The next 2 weeks could get really interesting. That's
going to be.
Yeah.
All right. Well, listen, folks, as I was trying to say, the show is done. And I want to thank Cobra and Don and Dan and I don't even know. Anyway, good night.